Hey everybody, welcome back to Young Engineers of Today. I hope you had a good couple of days, and I hope you're ready to continue with Over the Wire, because we're going to have one more of that, and then we're going to move on to other stuff, presumably. But yeah, so that's what we're gonna focus on today. I'll spend some time reviewing a little bit about what we did last time, but we're mostly just going to try and jump into it because I know you guys were here on Monday, so you don't really need like a whole lot of review as to what we did. But yeah, so let's go ahead and spend a little bit of time talking about it. Without further ado, so we started on level 6 last time. We talked about the password being stored somewhere on the server, or the challenge was the password was stored somewhere on the server. The important thing was it was owned by specific user and a group, a specific user and a specific group, and it was a specific size. And that was sort of further refinement of our find command, which we used in 5 to get to 6, where it was stored, the password was stored somewhere and it had a certain, had a certain size to it and all that stuff. So that was more about just finding based on user and stuff like that, or excuse me, owner. And it also introduced the concept of ownership to us in a computer sense. Owners can read and write to their files, they can delete them, move them, stuff like that, generally, usually. Bandit Labs is a special case, or the Bandit game is a special case because, they don't want people messing with everything. But generally, the owner of a file can both read and write to it as opposed to just read it, and sometimes not even that. But, just they have more permissions. You can only have one owner of a file, which can be tricky when you want to have multiple people able to edit a file and things like that without distributing multiple, like a username and a password to multiple people. So your way around that is by creating an ownership group and adding users to it, because a group, you can have one single owner and you can have one group owner. Both in tandem. And the thing about the group owner is any number of people can belong to that group. So you can have it so that one person owns it, but everybody else belongs to a group that also owns it. So, everybody has the same permissions on the file, that sort of thing. People who aren't a part of that, people who aren't that owner or a part of that group will really only have permission to read it generally. And again, that's even if, they get like permission from the owner for that sort of thing. That's not even a guarantee. Yeah, basically like Google Drive. Yeah. If you're not the owner, you're not going to be able to edit it. You got the idea, though. So that's what that was all about. And so that was sort of a light introduction to ownership. And then we moved on to level 7 once we found the file. And then that was a little bit interesting. It was stored in the file data.txt, and it was next to the word millionth. Normally not a big deal, except for the fact that data.txt was hundreds of thousands of lines long. In fact, so long that it overflowed the line buffer in PuTTY. So even if we wanted to wade through hundreds of thousands of lines of text to find the one specific one that we want, we weren't able to because PuTTY wouldn't even scroll back that far. Now we could increase the number of lines that PuTTY remembers, which just means that it's a larger amount of memory. But we could totally do that if we wanted to, and go further and further back and look for it. But who wants to just comb through that many lines by hand, so to speak? So we introduced the Grep command. This baby right here. The Grep command is sort of like an in-file search. So we used the find command, which allows us to find a specific file, and then we use the Grep command, which allows us to find certain strings inside of a file. That is to say, certain words or sentences, or even just collections of letters. So that's what grep is for. We ended up using grep to find the word millionth in the file. It spat out the line that millionth was on, which coincidentally also happens to be the line that the password is on. So we were able to use that password to bring us to level 8. This one was, yes, unique. We talked about unique and how unique is able to basically provide lines in a file that only appear once. So we tried it, didn't really work. We found out then that unique only works, it only checks against lines that are adjacent to it, so it will only spit out unique lines if it, or it will only filter out lines if they appear next to an identical line, which was kind of a problem in our case because even though there were a whole bunch of repeats, they weren't right next to each other. So that didn't really help us. Enter the sort command, which allows you to alphabetically sort lines in a file or in some sort of inputs and then send them to outputs. So we were able to sort it and get this nice sorted file. Or nice sorted output. The only problem is it doesn't actually change anything on the file. The file remains the same the whole time. Like the analogy that I had was, imagine you had a friend who was holding a piece of paper and you asked them to read everything on the paper in alphabetical order, and they did that. They didn't actually change the order of anything on the piece of paper. It's all in the same order. They just changed what order they read everything to you. So we run into a bit of a situation where we need to find some way to sort these lines and then run unique on it to see if we can't get anything, and then spit that out to output, which is where pipes came in. Pipes being those nice, just little vertical lines. Pipes being something that allow you to string commands together before you spit that stuff out to standard output or to a file or whatever. So we were able to sort data.txt and then feed it directly into unique without skipping back to standard output or anything like that. Just sort it and then send it directly to unique, which allowed us to find, because now all of the repeats were next to each other, so it allowed us to filter those out and provide us with the one line that we were looking for, which brought us to level 9 because it was the password, coincidentally. So then the password for the next level in level 9 was stored in one of the few human readable strings beginning with several equal sign characters. That was pretty easy. We just literally typed strings and then data.txt, and it fed us the parts of the file that were actually letters and stuff like that, strings, as opposed to all that garbage nonsense. And then 10 to 11 was the password was stored in data.txt, which contains base 64 encoded data. And we've spent a little bit of time talking about all the different ways of counting. Like base 10 is what you're used to, it's what you're familiar with. Then we've got base 4, base 2, base 16, also known as hexadecimal. Base 2 is also known as binary, so on and so forth. So base 64 is just another means of counting where you don't hit 10 until you hit 64. Weird, right? I can't even begin to imagine how they represent that character-wise, at least not right now. Let me see, actually, if we can just do a quick Google for it. How to count in base 64. Aha, here we go. So base 64 actually uses characters instead of numbers to represent it. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, and then they go lowercase. And then because they still have to do more, then they start using numbers. Confusing enough for you? And then they start using plus and backslash. So by the time you hit 0 in base 64, you've actually already counted up to 52. By the time you hit 1, you've counted up to 53. So base 64 is very strange. But it's a very easy way to compress values. As you can see here, there's a whole bunch of stuff on converting to base 64. We're not going to worry about that. Anyway, all we did was we decoded from base 64 back to binary, and then it might actually be base 10 since it's ASCII. Base 10 or hexadecimal based on, depending upon whatever translation table they use. Anyway, we translated it into something that could be useful for ASCII, which gave us the password, which brings us to 11. And 11, I'm not going to lie to you, is a pretty annoying level. So we'll spend some time going over that one as well. Spend a decent amount of time going over that one. So let me go ahead and connect to Bandit over the wire, log in as Bandit11, and feed it the password, which I put into the chat box. So, oh no, 11 is okay, actually. It's 12, which is annoying. So the password for the next level is stored in the file data.txt, where all lowercase and uppercase letters have been rotated by 13 positions. This is nothing but a simple Caesar cipher. So if you've never seen like a Caesar cipher before, I'd be a little bit surprised. But it's like a Caesar, a shift cipher, a Caesar cipher, something like that. Basically, all it is you take a letter, and then you have like a number. So you have, in this example here, 3. And you take every letter in your secret phrase or whatever, and you shift all of the letters over by 3. So as you can see here, an E will become a B, an F will become a C, a G will become a D, an H will become an E, and an I will become an F, and so on and so forth. So you start out with something like the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, and you shift all the letters over by 3, and you get Q, E, B, N, R, F, Z, H, Y, O, L, T, K, blah, 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 blah. You get ostensibly what seems like gibberish. And that's the exact point of the Caesar cipher. It's not some sort of crazy cryptography, although it is some of the earliest cryptography that exists. It's just meant to look like nothing to people. And the thing about a Caesar cipher is it can be pretty easy to recognize that you're looking at a Caesar cipher, and it can be pretty easy to break a Caesar cipher. Because all it takes is some patience and the ability to just sort of keep track of what you're looking at. As soon as you start, like, oh, okay, so like let's try shifting everything over by 1. Oh, that still puts out nonsense. Let's try shifting everything over by 2. That still puts out nonsense. Let's try shifting everything over by 3. That still puts out nonsense, so on and so forth. So yeah, Caesar cipher is a very simplistic sort of thing. But that's what this is. So what we need to do is we need to shift or translate the letters over by 13 positions. Rotate the letters by 13 positions. Now, I said translate, that's just a fancy word for move or shift. And in fact, that's what this TR command is here. So let's go ahead and check the manual page for TR. Translate, squeeze, and or delete characters from standard input, writing to standard outputs. Sounds exactly like what we're looking for. I'll go ahead and save you some time. So the way translate works is you provide for it, first off, the command, the ideal, A through Z, and the shifted values, in this case, N through Z, A through M. And as you can see, I put a space between TR and the A-Z, and then I put another space between the A-Z and the N through Z, but I did not put a space between the N through Z and the A through M, and that is to represent the fact that it sort of wraps around. So I'm going to hit enter, and I get this nothing, like I just get nothing. But let me do this. Hello, type hello and hit enter. And I get URYYB. Let me try it. URYYB. Enter. I get hello back. So what it's doing right now is it's translating what I'm typing into the terminal and shifting it. So I can say, this is my secret phrase. And I get guf vif zul per quenfer. And if somebody were to type guf vif zul per they would get as an output, this is my secret phrase. You know, I could start typing in repo nonsense GUF or repert. Let's see what happens. Still nonsense. Total nonsense. I thought maybe I could actually get close to a letter or a word. Anyway, let me hit Control and then C in order to back out of that. And let me check the cat data.txt. gerbs let me check our translation again, and I'll type in cnffjbeq. Password. Hey, how about vf? Is. How about gur? Uh-oh. But maybe. Okay, so it's translating lowercase letters, but it's not translating uppercase letters. So I'll hit Command C, and we'll do this: tr a-z, and without a space, capital A dash capital Z, and we'll just do what we did before. Let me just double check that, because this one is a little bit weird to remember. Okay, so yeah, N dash Z, A dash M, and then capital N dash capital Z, capital A dash capital M. Hit enter. Let's type in GUR. Let's type CNFFJBEQ all capitalized, and we get password in all caps. If we type CNFFJBEQ, looks like we're translating everything properly, regardless of capitalization. Good. So now what? Now we need to send the information from data.txt into our little translation cipher. Let me go ahead and hit up on the keyboard in order to bring it back up out of history. Hey, this seems like a job for pipes, right? Cat data.txt pipe to our little translation. Perfect. The password is 5T, 8Y, 4DR, so on and so forth. We now have our new password. So let's go ahead. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it into the chat box, just because sometimes I can take a minute to really sort of get through that part and type all that stuff out, especially if, you know, like you accidentally stick a space where there shouldn't be one, or, you know, don't put a space where there should be one. So yeah, that password is ready for prime time. Let's go ahead and SSH into Bandit 12 using that trick that I showed you guys last time around. Yes, right-click to paste, and now we're in Bandit 12. Let's ls. Let's check out data.txt. Well, that's unusual. This output, by the way, is hexadecimal. Well, everything on this side. Everything on this side is hexadecimal. This is actually sort of some information about what's contained and some translation of it. But I wouldn't rely on this. And I'll show you why in a minute. In fact, right now. Boop. Let's go to Bandit 12 to 13. This is the annoying one. So the password for the next level is stored in the file data.txt, which is a hex dump of a file that has been repeatedly compressed, and they're not kidding around. It's been compressed like 7 times, and it's really irritating. For this level, it may be useful to create a directory under TMP in which you can work using the command make directory tmp myname123, then copy the data file using cp and rename it using mv. So what they're saying here is the mkdir is short for make directory. That's what that means. It's just, that's the command for making a new directory or folder. There is only one place in the whole server where we can create a new folder, and that's inside the TMP folder. If you remember, Hannah, you were asking last time why it was highlighted in green. That means that anybody has the ability to write to it. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to write a folder to there that we're going to work in, because we can write folders to TMP, but we can't write anything else to TMP. We can't really read anything in TMP. However, any folders we write to TMP, we have full access to, which is a little confusing, right? So we have a folder that we have limited access to, but inside of that folder, we have full access. So you can do stuff like you can have like a whole bajillion files inside of TMP, like what's happening here, a whole bajillion files inside of TMP that a whole bunch of people have created, and they don't have the ability to look at other folders inside of TMP. They don't have the ability to look at TMP to see what other folders exist in there, but they can work inside of their folder inside of TMP like it's their own sort of special part of the hard drive. They can do whatever they want there. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a folder inside of TMP with the make directory command. And the syntax is just make directory and then a space and then the file path. So it's going to be TMP /TMP / Thomas D1. So that's what that's going to be. So make directory TMP Thomas D1, because I'm clever. Obviously, you can replace the Thomas D1 with whatever means anything to you. You know, it could be Caleb B, or you know, Ninja Fire 337, or whatever. You know, it doesn't have to be your first initial or your first name and your last initial. It doesn't have to be any of that stuff. It can be whatever you want. That's easy for me to remember because it's my name. So far so good, right? We've created a new directory. We need to move this data.txt file over there. And we can do that with a copy. So what copy does is we feed it the original location of a file that we want to copy. So in this case, our data file. And then the place we want to move it to, including its name when it gets there. Now what we're doing is we're copying this data.txt file to our new temporary file, and we're giving it the same name. If we wanted to, we could call it moved data.txt. And in fact, to prove a point here, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to change directories to our new folder. Look at that. It's called movedata.txt, but if we cat it, it's the exact same file. It's just given a different name. It's like every time you tried to copy something in Windows or the Macintosh operating system, it asked you if you wanted to keep the same name each time. It doesn't generally. It assumes you want to keep the same name. You rename explicitly. And this, you can just copy and give it a different name at its destination. Now, copy is distinct from move. Copy keeps a copy of the original folder, or excuse me, file. Keeps a copy of the original file. So that data.txt that we copied from, that's still going to be there. Move does not. So let's say we wanted to moved file. So now we have a new directory called moved file inside of here, and we moved data to moved file moved data.txt. Now if we check it out in here, it's empty. There's just moved file. If we go into moved file, there's our moved data. So it does not keep a copy of it in its original location. Now here's the other rub. Since you don't have to name it the same thing, move is how you rename files. So we'll just do that because that's a lot easier. Mine. Look at that. Whoop. Look at that. Move data is gone, and now it's mine.txt. All we've done is we've renamed this file. If we cat it, boom, there you go. So this is a hex dump of a file. We need to convert this to not hex, but back to binary. And I'll save you guys some time. That's done with the xxd command. So let's check the manual page for xxd. xxd, revert. There you go. Reverse operation. Convert or patch hex dump into binary. So there you go. We also have to provide an output file. So let's say xxd minus r mine.txt to and if we check cat mine.txt, it's no longer a hex dump file. So let's check the actual file. There we go. It is a compressed data folder. What does that sound like? I'll give you a hint. Check the name. Well, yeah, okay, so the hint is in the name. gzip, it's a zip file. So anyway, what we need to do is we need to unzip this file, and it's actually done. If we check this here, since we know it's a gzip file, we probably want to check gzip here, so we'll man gzip. Okay, gzip or gunzip, short for gunzip, or gunzip. It's, let's see here, decompress, perfect. Hey, all right, so gzip minus d mine.txt. Unknown suffix ignored. Again, I'll save you some time. gzip has a very strict requirement. It needs to work with .gz file types. It cannot work with .txt file types, despite the fact that this .txt file is a gunzip archive or a gunzip compressed file. So, move to the rescue. All we're doing is we're just renaming the file so it has a .gz extension. If we check it, and look, it's a different color now. It knows it's a gunzip. So let's gzip minus d mine.gz. Enter. Decompression okay, trailing garbage ignored. Interesting. Let's file mine. Whoops. Let's not introduce typos. So this is a bzip2 compressed data block. So now we need to use bzip2. This is also minus d. And we're going to decompress mine. Can't guess original name for mine using mine.out. All that means is it couldn't figure out what the original file name was, so it just gave us mine.out. Let's check the file type of mine.out. Oh look, it's a gzip. Okay, so move mine.out to mine.gz. Let's gzip mine.gz. What do we have now? We have something called mine. What type is it? Oh look, it's a tar archive. Now you can really see why this is getting annoying. because they compressed it like a billion times. So let's tar minus D, mine, nothing happens. Let's check the man page for tar. Oh, look at that. It's because -X is the decompress command for tar. Okay, tar -X, mine. Still doesn't work. Well, if we check the man page more, we would have had to append this F to it. I know I could spend more time explaining this, but as it stands right now, unfortunately, this particular level is just longer than it needs to be. So let's file, let's check out what we've got now. We've got data5.binary. Let's check file data5.binary. Oh, look at that, another tar archive. So let's tar -XF, data5.binary, bam, ls, data6.binary. What type of file is data6? Wow, I tried to type file, data6.binary. bzip2 compressed data block size 900K, bzip2 -D, data6.binary, data6.binary.out. What type of file is data6.binary.out? Oh, look at that, it's a tar archive, so tar -XF, data6.binary.out. There's no tab completion with it on tar for some reason. What do we get there? Data8.binary file, data8.binary. Oh boy, what's this? Oh, it's a gzip, so we need to move data8.binary to data8.gz, and then we need to decompress data8.gz. And what do we have here? ls, we have data8. What's file data8? ASCII text. Thankfully, finally, ASCII text. Let's get it. We got a password. Hey, we're done with this one. So, yeah, that one's long and annoying. I think it's just meant to introduce you to the different sorts of unzip or decompression and compression utilities that are available to basic, Unix systems. And these aren't even really all necessarily guaranteed to appear on a Unix system, but I think one of these three is guaranteed to appear on a Unix system, so that's why they do it, so that you get familiarity with all of them. But that's still super annoying, the fact that you just have to sort of work around it. But, I get the idea that repetition breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt. No, familiarity, breeds proficiency, and so on and so forth. But anyway, let's move past that terrible level. SSH into bandit 13 at localhost. Boom. Yes. Paste. Enter. We're now in bandit 13. ls. SSH key.private. Interesting. Let's cat it. Begin RSA private key. End RSA private key. Curiouser and curiouser. This doesn't look like a password. Let's check the level. The password for the next level is stored in /etc/bandit password /bandit14 and can only be read by user bandit14. For this level, you don't get the next password, but you get a private SSH key that can be used to log into bandit14, essentially. So we don't get a password in order to get into bandit14. In fact, in order to get the password for bandit15, oh, wait, no, this is the password for bandit14. The password for bandit15, we need to submit the password for bandit14. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's the password for both bandit14 and bandit15, interestingly enough. We don't have access to that file. We don't have the means to look at that file because we're not bandit14. So we can't do what we've been doing forever now, which is to just input the password for the next level. However, we do have an SSH key, and that's what this is. This is an SSH key. In fact, a big hint right here, SSH key.private, the name of it. And that will allow us to actually bypass the password requirement for Bandit 14. So how do we use it? Well, man, SSH, because we're going to need to SSH into the next level and somehow feed the password in, or excuse me, the SSH key into it. So we'd go through the man page. Poking through the man page, we get here to this one, identity file. Selects a file from which the identity private key for public key authentication is read. The default is .ssh identity for protocol version 1, blah, blah, blah. This is what we're going to want. We're going to want an identity file. That's what this is. This is an identity file. So it functions like this, SSH -I, and then the location of this SSH key. And then Bandit 14 at localhost. We are just now starting to get more into like the network security stuff that goes on in Bandit. Everything before this has been just basic tutorials on how to navigate the terminal. We're still scratching the surface on how to navigate the terminal. We're still getting there. We're still just getting better at it. But this is where we start to touch on the network-related stuff. This is the actual network security stuff that the rest of Over the Wire is all about. So we are trying to SSH into a username on localhost. We don't have the password, but we do have an SSH key that it can utilize. And that is how this is set up. We are SSHing. We are secure shelling, whatever you want to call it. We're getting into Bandit 14 at localhost. In fact, if we get rid of this bit right here, this is nothing you haven't seen before. This is just a regular old SSH into the next username. It's just in the past we've had the password. So let's go ahead and boom, Bandit 14 at localhost. Boom. We'll hit enter. Could not create directory. Home bandit8.ssh. Bandit13.ssh, the authenticity of localhost. Okay, so looking over this, it's actually just the same error message we've been getting every single time, or the same warning, I should say, we get every single time we try and log in through SSH on while we're still connected to Bandit. So I'm going to hit yes. Hey, look at that. We skipped straight past. Look at this. Where is it? There we go. Nope, never mind, not that one. But we skipped straight over the password. And in fact, it asked for Bandit 13's password because Bandit 13 has permission to use the SSH key that gets into Bandit 14. But we already put in Bandit 13's password. Wait. No, I was just looking at the wrong one. I scrolled up too far. But that can also be a thing that happens. It'll ask for the password of the person who has permission to use that access key. I cannot, unfortunately. I can put the command in chat. That is the command that you would use, but I cannot put the SSH key into the chat, which is one of the security features of SSH. There's nothing that's put into the terminal other than the local location of that file, so it's not like you're typing in a password and somebody using a keylogger can sniff that password. You only allow access to people who have the key, which means that it's only allowable from specific computers. And it's a very, very long, it's essentially kind of like a very, very long password. So it would take an incredibly long time for another computer in order to crack it, like forever, implausibly long, impossibly long, not impossibly long, but yeah. Anyway, I got a little excited there. So remember what it was saying about how the password is stored at this location, bandit pass, bandit 14? Let's cat it. Hey, look at that. We got a password because we have permission to look at that password. Isn't that something? So we have permission to look at that password. And in fact, if we go to the next level, the password for the next level can be retrieved by submitting the password of the current level to port 3000 on localhost, or 30,000, excuse me, not 3,000, 30,000 on localhost. Interesting. Let's check out SSH again. Protocol version 1, bind address, Cipher spec, bind address, log file, escape, config file, identity file, bind address, port host, host port, login name, max spec, option. Port, do we have a password authentication, number of password prompts? Okay. QRSTUV, control path, bind address. So let's see here. Let's check out some of the examples they've got down here, because usually they have some examples. Virtual private networks for SSH. Actually, okay, so here we go. Bind address, port, port, host port, okay, perfect. Or we can just say port, user, host name. Okay, so let's give it a try. So we're going to say SSH minus P space 30,000, bandit 15 at localhost. So what we're doing right now, same thing. We're bandit 13 at local hosting, or excuse me, bandit 15 at local hosting, but we're specifying a port now, which is something that is also important for network security. A lot of times network traffic, certain ports will only accept certain types of network traffic. Many ports will not accept network traffic at all. But certain ports will also, if they do accept network traffic, will only accept certain types of network traffic. For instance, we've always been doing SSH through port 22. Generally, SSH only goes through port 22. However, you can customize that. You can move it off of a different port in order to, maybe make it harder for other people to try and just like poke at you with SSH or something like that. And if the port is forwarded, your computer will still take it in through port 22, but you can say, oh, port 300 is going to be my SSH port, and I'm just going to forward it on my end to port 22. Well, if they have port 300, they may not necessarily know what type of connection it's going to be, depending upon how your computer. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. Port 3000. SSH exchange identification connection closed by remote host. Okay. Well, let's see here. Let's check out some of these other commands. Telnet, NC, OpenSSL, SClient, and Nmap. What's NC? Netcat. Let's try netcat localhost. No, that didn't work. Let's try SClients. No, that's not going to work either. All right. Sorry, back to the man page for SSH. Okay, so that's, all right, so I think I actually just had a, there we go. So if we do a -w localhost colon 30,000, because it's asking us for the host on the port with a -w, it will force it to localhost. And then if we do bandit 15 at localhost, it's just going to be our login information. And it's going to ask for the password. We feed it the password. And we get permission denied. Oh, probably because I highlighted some other stuff accidentally. All right, we'll Control C and we'll drop back down into Bandit 14. Okay, so that is password that is listed in etc. Yeah, 4WC. Yeah, that's the one. So why is it not accepting it? Let's check out some other SSH. Port, Cipher, blah, blah, bind address, CTL path, host port, local return, bind login name, identity file, config file, escape character, log file, port option, control command, max spec, bind address, cipher spec. Let's see here. Why is this not cooperating with me? Okay, we'll thinking about it. We'll try NC. So let's see here. So if we do cat, boom. Oops. Cat, boom. Good Lord. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's not a file. So if we echo that though, that will send it to standard output. Now, if we echo this, and then we send that to nc-v localhost 30,000, we send the password right through. So you can see right here, connection to localhost 30,000 port succeeded, correct. BMFY ROE26WY. This started with a 4WC, so this is a new password. All right, so now we can SSH into Bandit 15. Yes, paste that password, and now we're in Bandit 15. I wasn't actually logging into Bandit 15. That was the thing that I was being dumb about. So the password for the next level can be retrieved by submitting the password of the current level to port 3001 on localhost using SSL encryption. I'll save you guys some time. Open SSL, S clients. That's the command you're going to want to use. So if we check the man page for S client, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. We've got a password, and then we've got to feed it, yeah, connect host port. All right, so here we go. So open SSL, S underscore clients, connect localhost 30,001, password, feed it the password. Whoops. Helps if you don't put a period there. Why is it? Oh, it's just repeating it. Okay. Let's just try without that first. 3001. And then we'll just feed it the password, hit enter. Heart beating, read R block, read error number. So this just basically means that there was a communication error. So if we do IGN_EOF, like they say in the thing, feed it, correct, we get another password. This is starting to get a little weird, right? I don't blame you if you think so. So bandit16, we're going to SSH into. And we're going to call it a night there. But bandit16 is interesting. You have to scan for ports using Nmap. It'll give you a list of ports that are open in listening. And this is one of the most basic security attacks. Anyway, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a day here. Let's go ahead and leave it open for question and answer time. If you guys have anything, I'll be here. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to head out and have a wonderful weekend.